Welcome to another episode of The More You Know. Welcome to 2021, everyone. Hope everyone had a safe Christmas and a New Year's. It's exciting to be starting the year off again. This might be a season two. I don't know how I want to split these up yet, but new year, new knowledge to be learned. And today I'm joined with KT. And today we're going to be talking about economics. KT, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
I can. I right now I'm a bachelor student, planning on pursuing my PhD in economics, focusing upon behavioral economics. I'm a really big fan of economics and the study thereof. I do subscribe to a specific school of it, but we'll get into more of that later. And so my plan today is just to present a pretty basic overview of exactly what is economics, how did we get to where we are today, and punctuate it with a couple interesting anecdotes that I think really sort of give economics more of a face behind the words that you may read or hear about on the news.
Perfect. If you don't mind me asking, what got you into wanting to major in economics? Because I feel a lot of people that I talk to, they're not a big fan of economics. Me, I kind of like economics, so I can see why. But what really got you into this?
I grew up poor. Was the main thing that I got into studying it, and so in the area I come from Western Kentucky, and so the basic thing is we grew up pretty poor. We didn't have a lot of money or anything like that, and the area was also having to deal with that. And so what I saw was that there was a lot of issues that were going on in our society that weren't really focused on. When I started hearing about economics, I'd hear about how there's so much research and stuff being done about the rich and the middle class and everything like that, and there was very little done in terms of individuals upon the lower scheme. And so my interest came into wanting to do focus upon what exactly is happening with the poor, and how can we learn more about this, and how can we use economics to bring the bottom up, as opposed instead of focusing upon every individual who already has money and already is benefiting from society.
What is a explain like I'm five definition of economics? Because when I talk to people and they tell me what economics is, a lot of them just respond with supply and demand.
Ah, yes. Economics is the best way to think of it is that when economics is studying something, and so it doesn't have ology in there like most of these things, but it is studying something. And so that's the first thing I want to think of it is, we're basically studying. Now, it's not a hard science, which is something I do want to start off the bat with. This is not chemistry. This is not, anything like that. What we're dealing with is something that people can have differing opinions and beliefs about. And so the first thing to remember when you hear economics is just because someone's an economist and says something does not mean they are right. And more than likely, there is an economist who is going to be disagreeing with them. And so if claim every economist or every economist believes this, they're wrong, because there are always economics or economists who do not believe everything that is being put forth. I mean, even today, we still have Marxist economists that are in the schools today. And so that's the first thing I want to establish is that there isn't really economics as a whole. But if you were to describe what is it in the most simplest terms, it is exchange and the study of that. And so when I give you something and you give me something, or I give you something and nothing else happens, that's what economics is. It's the study of all of these exchanges between people, and then we have different bits of it where it is micro. We focus upon people and businesses, and then macro we focus upon exchange between nations.
I believe in the beginning you said that you were a type of.
Yes, yes. And so economics is, so when you think of economics, yeah, is put into schools. And so throughout the history of economics, there's been different schools that we like to categorize economists in. And so we say, okay, these guys believe these things, we put them over here. These guys these things, put them over here, and we basically stack them up. And so I am a utopian socialist. Is my area of belief. And so, in case you're thinking, socialist, he must like Marx. I actually don't like Marx. And utopian socialism is predating Marx. And in fact, the pair Marx and Engels actually wrote a book called "The History of Utopian and Scientific Socialism," which really drew the line that separates them. And so the when you think about what is utopian socialism, it is focusing upon improving society through free exchange and exercise. And so a utopian socialist is a lot more of a fan of cooperatives, both consumer and producer. They're much more of a fan of labor unions and this belief that capitalism itself isn't evil, it's just poorly working to help society. And so this is a way to reorder society to benefit the majority of people in the most basic terms.
Gotcha. And for me, I kind of forgot. Could you kind of briefly go over what Marxism is?
Marxism. So Marxism, communism was developed by Marx and Friedrich Engels. These were two German economists. Marx, he focused upon bringing in different aspects of things and believed in such things as dialectical materialism. Also, if you hear the terms proletariat or bourgeoisie, those are Marx as well. And in fact, he was a very profound individual in terms of economics. While modern theory doesn't pull a lot from his stuff, there is lasting impacts that he's given us. And so Marx basically saw organizing society based upon studying these things, and so he rejected everything that came before it in terms of utopian socialism, claiming it to be just basic study of these intellectuals who don't really have any focus upon the real world. And so Marx wanted to bring forth such things as the study of history and other in politics and bringing everything together to reorder society. And that was sort of
Oof.
Marx's belief. Marx also believed in this concept of transitionary economies. And so Marx believed that we started off in the slave, and like we were all slaves for everybody, and then moved over to feudalism, and then feudalism moved over to capitalism, and then capitalism is going to fail, and then we're going to have communism, and everyone's going to be happy.
Oof.
And this is actually parroted sort of by Joseph Schumpeter, or it may not be Joseph, but yeah. Anyways, Schumpeter, he later said capitalism is going to fail in the Austrian school. Uh, However, everyone's going to be sad when capitalism fails. So yeah, there's multiple economists who believe that capitalism is going to fail. In modern ways, though, especially with the neo Keynesians, that belief has since subsided.
Hmm. What are your thoughts on capitalism itself?
Okay, so capitalism itself, so it's okay. It's not the best. It's not evil. It's not evil. It's not immoral. It's not disgusting. What it is it's a method of incentives, because I don't think you can describe any such system as evil or immoral. It's just a series of incentives. And so in capitalism, your incentive is to generate wealth for yourself, um, and provide the least to the individuals providing it to you. And so there's a few things, a few basically the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. The basics of production. You need all of these things to produce things. Well, in capitalism, you need to view labor as basically any as the machine, and so you want to get it for the cheapest possible. You want to get it for the least amount of money, and you want to work it the hardest you can. And so that's the incentive in terms of capitalism. And that's an issue I see with it. Capitalism focuses upon basically what can I pull from this in order to generate more money for myself.
Yeah, yeah. So in these cases, you're mostly talking about outsourcing jobs out to different countries.
Well, anything. The reason there. So when you think about in the modern sense of things, I can pull out the big company like Amazon. Amazon has no incentive to pay their workers any more than the market rate, and they don't. Now there is a theory of efficiency wages, which we're not going to get into today, but Amazon has every incentive to pay their employees the least amount as possible, provide them the least amount of protections, and do such. And so that's the reason that we see a lot of these issues in the news. We're like, Amazon, why are you paying these people so little? Because that's capitalism. That is their direct need, and that's what they're doing. They're responding to the incentives. Jeff Bezos isn't the king of Amazon that we like to think of it as. He's more of just the figurehead. He's, think of a constitutional monarch is the way I like to think of it. What's really going on is a bunch of shareholders, which don't care about any of this. The only thing they care about is getting more money from them. Exactly. And so their incentives are to get more dividends. Well, they get more dividends by forcing Amazon to give them more dividends. Well, you can't pull blood from a stone, so you have to get it from somewhere. And so they pull that from the workers.
It's it's such a disgusting concept to kind of think about when you think about how people today are kind of struggling too, because if you're getting just like the bare minimum, like you kind of can't live on the bare minimum anymore.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It is disgusting in the sense that it's wrong when we think about like Amazon is this terrible terrible company. But we also have to remember capitalism did give us the little local shops that we have, you know?
That is true.
I mean, it is an evil system in the sense that yes, we're going to have all these people that are come here and going to do all these terrible things, but that does mean that little bakery that that woman has, she can run that bakery, and she owns that bakery, and she has a person who works there. Um, when we think about we think about capitalism, we think we're in the late stage of this uber capitalist, this huge amount of corporatism, to a degree. Um, but if we actually look at like the economic history of the U.S., we had literal monopolies over industries. And these weren't the kind of monopolies you think of today of like Facebook, when Facebook is a monopoly in the social media, even though we have Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and all the rest of them. Instead, we had a one company who produced everything, and anytime there was competition, he would destroy it immediately. And then our economy was able to work past that. And so, like I said, economics has incentives that we need to change. And basically, that's what I like about utopian socialism is it seeks to redirect those incentives to helping the workers and the people, as opposed to helping uh, the owners who are separate from them.
If you don't mind, can we talk about how inflation really works?
Inflation. Okay. So are you referencing what exactly? So how is money created, or how does it get less valuable, or
That
does raising
that
the minimum
instance,
wage cause inflation?
kind of the both. Are you
Okay,
familiar with
okay,
the question of, well, with the statement of why can't we just print more money?
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
am familiar with that statement. And then people say something, and it's kind of funny to me. It's kind of like, why can't we drive why can't we drive our car to the beach? And they go, that's ridiculous. A guy from Kansas can't drive his car to the beach. And they're like, but we live in Florida, you know. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of, and that's the sort of setup here when I hear people say, why can't we just print more money? Venezuela. Like, that's
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
argument. Like, yeah, that's not an argument. Or the Weimar Republic or Zimbabwe. Yes, those
I
are countries. And
see
so mhm.
I see that on TikTok a lot of like people just saying, if we're in so much debt, why can't we just print more money to pay off the debt? And for me, like, I know that you can't do that, but I can't really explain it myself. Maybe you have a better way of
Yeah,
explaining of
yeah.
like what would happen if we did print out more money.
Okay, so yeah, let's. I want to start off with where does our money come from? Okay, so most people believe that our money comes from the treasure, like the mint. Hey, rev up them printers. We need another 20 million out tomorrow. That's not where our money comes from. It's not. Our money comes from our banking sector, and because we have fractional reserve banking. And so when you go to the bank and you put $100 in, and let's say the reserve rate is 10%, then they get to loan out $90. And then the other person who puts in the $90 then then the bank puts away the $9 and it's $81. And it continues on in this amazing loop. And so the Federal Reserve decides how much money there is, and the Federal Reserve controls our inflation. And they try to keep it at about 2% because we sort of think of the economy as a wheel, and inflation just a little bit helps to grease that wheel and keep it rolling. But no inflation kind of hinders the economy's ability to do so, and deflation could cause the economy to roll backwards and basically start the economy falling in and upon itself. And deflation is a very hard thing to cure. But what is inflation, and why can't we just print more money to solve our problem? We don't know that we can't, is the answer that I'm going to give you. We don't know that we cannot do that, actually. Uh, yeah, yeah. Remember when I said economics is a social science? So like, there's people who disagree with upon everything in like the modern sense. Like most things are disagreed upon in terms of theory. Yeah, and so modern monetary theory believes that so long as there is faith upon the government, we don't have to worry about printing more money because we can generate more dollars. And so long as people have faith in the government that they're going to be able to pay off the dollars, it's not a problem. Uh, and so that's the belief. Is it perfect? No. And am I giving it the best response? Absolutely not. I haven't had a chance to study it thoroughly. But I will give the example back when we had back when Obama was in office and we had the issue of the debt ceiling and other such. There was a small loophole that they were going to exploit where they were going to generate $1 trillion coin and put that in the U.S. economy and like give that to the give that to the U.S. government. We're going to take $1 trillion and then give that to the U.S. government so that they could keep the country running, and we could do that. So would that cause inflation to rise? Maybe. Because we have to think of something else here. Every time oil is traded in the world, it's through dollars. It's the petrodollar system. Every time so the Chinese are also really big helpers in terms of keeping our dollars at where they are in price in terms of the yuan. So they would have a very hard time of that as well. And so, in the simplest answer of why can't we pay off our debt with printing money, is well, it might cause inflation to rise above 2%.
What do you know the trends of inflation during the past couple of years?
Inflation, ever since we've had the Federal Reserve, they've tried to keep it around 2%. We did have inflationary issues back in the 1970s
So
because
did that just like kind of wreck us for the years upcoming if we have one bad year like over 2%?
no, so inflation is a tax upon savings. That's all inflation is. Inflation is a tax upon savings. And so inflation causes people to spend now, which increases our consumption and decreases our savings. And so if you're increasing consumption, you're not expanding the economy. So like you're not expanding the ability to purchase more things in the future. And so higher inflation means that occur. And so there's a lot of effects that'll happen. And so if we had 3, 4, 5, 10% inflation, we would see consumption rise in the US economy, which would make our economy look better. And then we would also see savings rates go down. And so that really isn't that big a deal unless that continues on for years and years on end, because eventually if people are not able to get money, then the confidence of the dollar goes away, the dollar confidence goes away, people stop trading in dollars because it's not safe anymore, people pour the money out of the economy, and we have issues like that that'll occur. But that's all inflation is just taxing savings. So every year there's 2% inflation, so it takes a little cut out of your savings. That's just every year. Now, usually the market is able to better itself than over that, and so people don't really lose that money every year, especially if they have it in a 401k or Roth IRA or such like that.
What talks about the stimulus now? What are your thoughts on stimulus talks that are going on right now, and just the whole like overall concept of like how we've been going about on getting help to the American citizens?
Okay. So I want to split this into two different answers because one can make me seem like an asshole, um, and one doesn't. So in terms of welfare, the $2,000 is not enough. The $2,000 is really just not helping what we need to do. It is an effectively a bare minimum proposal, and it has done great things. The fact that it has gotten people to argue about an extra $1,400 in Congress. That has been the only thing that it has been able to do. It's sort of shifted the public focus. We need much more than that, and we need to find a better method of giving ourselves that. Do we need the $2,000? Absolutely, we do. But we need more than that because it is providing welfare to the American public who have been just dogpiled on the amount of issues. 1 in 8 Americans have food insecurity issues. A third of American households are worried about being evicted. These are major issues, and $2,000 is a drop in the bucket, and it's not going to solve the problem at all. And that's the welfare answer is it's not enough.
What do you think goes through the minds of the people trying to write these bills up and even trying to propose a $600 check?
Okay, so first question is who do you think's writing the bills?
Uh, Congress. politics, people in Washington.
Yeah, it's people in Washington. It's not really the politicians anymore. And so what is going through their mind is, and so this sort of pulls out of my area of expertise. So, take what I'm saying right now with about a half a bag of salt. Um, right now, the issue is that the right side of our nation is heavily opposed to any form of direct to citizen approach to anything. And on the left side, it's heavily opposed to any direct to business. And so that's what we're seeing is this basic split of who gets the money, right? Is it business or is it the people? And that's the basic disconnect here. And they're not coming together to have this argument out. And so, you can argue, well, they're bought and sold, and well, maybe they are. We don't. I mean, you can argue, but every politician's different individual. I know that there's a big push today that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, how terrible is he that he won't give us what we want? It's kind of funny. I mean, he is my senator, and I hate him. I didn't vote for him this year. I voted for Amy Klobuchar, or not. I didn't, not Amy Klobuchar, Amy McGrath. But yeah, he is my senator, and I am very sorry. But that's the thing is
That's
that
so funny.
yeah, it is, and so, but he's not the only Republican senator. We do have to remember that. Like the Senate Majority
Yeah.
Leader doesn't vote for his entire side for his entire side of the Senate. No, it is the rest of the senators. So yeah, like let's go, let's go and let's get rid of Mitch. We should have done that a long time ago. But we also have to remember that every other Republican congressman is doing the same thing and blocking this bill. That's what's going on here. Is Mitch is leading the charge, but everyone else in there is rank and file along with him.
God, so messed up. Yeah, whenever like, is there like from an economist's view of like why they don't want to? Also, like, would it just be like giving too much money out, pumping too much out in the economy, and then
Oh,
they think
okay.
it's
So
going to
yeah,
cause like
yeah,
some other thing
this is going to dig down into my other
down the
answer.
road?
Yeah, well, I'm saying this is going to dig down to my other answer when I talk like the economic answer. What is the economic benefit of a stimulus? Nothing. Yeah, and
No
so
benefits. Only there's only drawbacks.
there is no economic benefit to a stimulus. There isn't necessarily economic disadvantages in terms of what we're talking about here, but in terms of like economics, there is no economic benefit to a stimulus. But we should not treat stimuluses as an economic like an injection in terms of economics. Like yes, the economy is sick. Let's give them a stimulus. That's not how it works in any regard here. And so that's the thing is we fix the economy by getting people back to work. That's the way the economy gets back to work and getting it together. And so that's one issue we've seen is that people are trying to treat the stimulus as a key to solving the issues, but it's not. When we had the stimulus under the Obama administration, that $800 billion stimulus, it didn't cause that to happen because this digs into a proposed thought by Milton Friedman, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm accrediting this too. And so basically his belief was that people don't raise their spending above because above what they think they're going to earn. So if their earnings are zero, they're not going to their spending is only going to be going to things that they absolutely need. And so what we're going to see with this stimulus, this $600 or $2,000, is it's going to go to debt and back spending, and that's about it. People who are in okay financial situations, the joke is they'll go buy a PS5, um, which is going to help. Like that. That's the thing. Like they'll go buy a PS5. That and that doesn't help the economy really because yeah, you've helped bought a PS5, but you're not really generating that much to the economy, and so that's really where we're going to see these issues. Is that the stimulus has sort of warped so it was originally proposed as a way to basically give the economy a shot. Basically this goes all the way back to John Maynard Keynes and his proposals of let us fix the economy for people, let us flatten out the curve of these booms and bust cycles, and let us find ways to engineer the economy for people, because that was what John Maynard Keynes was all about, was engineering the economy. And so nowadays we have the stimulus, which was originally, yes, let's engineer the economy. It didn't work. And now everybody's going, yes, let's give people money. And it's not working. And so this is basically a really bad UBI, or universal basic income.
Do you think instead of stimulus checks to everyone, because there's arguments out there that there are people that are still working right now that their jobs have not been affected that are still getting these stimulus checks where uh, a big conversation of topic is the college dependents that just graduated college too. Now I feel like they're getting hammered too, and they're getting denied any type of like monetary relief, and some of them
It's
could be
almost like
just
the
entering
government
the
is
job force.
ineffective.
And I've seen, yeah, because I've seen like people on LinkedIn saying like, "Hey, I just got my offer letter rescinded because of the pandemic, and I just graduated college, like, and they're just looking for work." And I'm just thinking of like these people that were probably claimed by their parents' tax returns on 2019, and they're not getting any help at all. And it just blows my mind that they are the group that gets excluded from this.
Yeah, as someone who's not receiving it as well, it does suck. That's the only way to put it out there. The fact that we don't exist, because that's kind of what they're treating it as. Because we don't, their parents don't get anything, and we don't get anything, so it's we don't exist. It's really weird that that's how it is. But that's the thing, is that it doesn't matter. The government's not here to help us. It's something, and that's something we've seen for a long time, and that's the current state of what many people feel, is the government's not really here to help us. But yeah, that is a bad thing. Should it be that way? Is no. And but also, you mentioned the fact of like, what about people whose lives haven't been affected by this pandemic? There are people out there whose lives haven't been affected by this pandemic, and so the issue though is, are we supposed to send out like social workers to go interview people to see if they deserve the money? And that's sort of where it falls into this issue of like,
Yeah.
how do we determine who gets it and who doesn't, who deserves it and who doesn't? uh, and it really falls into this big trap of deciding that. And so my response would be that I think that we should take the approach that we should take the approach of a UBI, of a temporary universal basic income, is something that would have made a lot more sense to me. And so that would have
So
been my
let's talk
proposal.
about UBI.
Hmm. Okay.
So let's talk about UBI. I know that Alaska does it, right? Alaska does UBI.
Alaska gives their residents some money from their oil and other mineral exploitation, I believe. I'm not certain on that, so don't quote
Oh,
me.
okay.
Yeah. And so, what is UBI, UWI, or universal basic income? And there's a lot of variations there of them. I like a certain variation. Um, but anyways, and so we have universal basic income, which is where every month you get money. Now there is a cap for people earning so much money that they don't get money every year. And so there is this argument that, yes, this is going to help people. And we have done studies. There have been limited studies and trials in a multitude of nations to see what would happen if we did incorporate this. And so, can you guess how it went?
Honestly, I think it would probably be really beneficial.
It was a resounding success. You're right. What it caused was that expecting mothers and children in school stayed in school longer, and expectant mothers took more time off with their children. That was the effect of the
Oh,
UBI.
huh.
That was the effect of the UBI. And so, if we gave everyone in this country the universal basic income, would that be beneficial? It would be very beneficial to a lot of people. And so, this argument's going to, of course, fall down, and I can already hear it screaming in the back of my head. But if we give poor people money, then the prices of everything is just going to skyrocket. No.
Yeah, that's the next question that I wanted to ask you was how would this money, like,
Okay.
how would we get this money?
Okay, so that's a different question. But the question of like, what does it do to prices? Prices will rise by a very, very small amount. And so this is sort of piggybacking off another study that I've looked at and seen, where it was where they how does raising the minimum wage affect the prices, affect inflation? 0.02% is the
Wow.
increase in inflation. 0.02% is what the rise you're going to see there in terms of cost pull inflation is what we're dealing with here. So a very, very small amount to help a lot of people. And so that's sort of where we see that. Now that digs in the minimum wage, and there's an argument about that, whether we should have it or should not have it. Let's not dig into that right now. But what we should mention is, where do we get the money from the UBI? Is a very good question. Where should we pull that money from? Well, my argument is
Where do
that
other nations?
where do other nations don't have the UBI?
Oh, wait, really?
Yes, there may be one country that I'm missing, but I don't believe there is. It was either Switzerland or Sweden that had a referendum to continue to have a UBI and that failed. a few years
Ah,
ago. I don't remember which one it was, or there may be a country that does it that I'm not sure of. But I do know that. So where can we get the money from? And so we can get the money from our welfare system. There's one big argument: we can get the money from our welfare system. And so that would be my argument: is that we take our current welfare system and we roll it over to a basic insurance for individuals in the U.S. in terms of where we could get the money for UBI. But in terms of what's happening right now with the current pandemic, is I would have argued we just give every American $2,000 every month for the whole year, and then afterwards we switch over to a negative income tax.
what is a negative income tax?
Negative income tax is a variation of the UBI, and this comes from Milton Friedman, which, if anyone knows, he is a big Chicago school economist, so big capitalist, free market kind of guy. Which is kind of weird that like a utopian socialist would be, hey, let's listen to this guy. But I do agree with him, and that's sort of one of the things I enjoy about it is that I just want to establish that fact because I'm just in case people are wondering why would he quote this man. But yeah, he basically said we should give people a guaranteed income. So let's say $12,000. Every American is guaranteed $12,000, which is near the poverty line. But let's say they go out and they work for and they earn $1. Well, we take 50 cents away from that. And so you're always benefited from working with the negative income tax. There is never a point in time in which you are ever going to be harmed by earning more money. And so you would go from the negative income tax, you would switch over, and you would be on the progressive income tax we have now, which is where you do pay more money over time, but you will never earn less money than you did before due to the bracketing system. And so if we had that system, there would be this incentive for people to work more and work harder and earn more money, as always. However, there would always be a guarantee for everyone in terms of their current situation. Now, is there an argument that all welfare programs should be destroyed and then we should only rely upon this? That's an argument to be made. Is it the best method of doing so? I'm not so certain. I would be much more of a fan of a sort of mixture of we take some programs that are really good and we keep the UBI, and we have a mixed approach and we really see which ones are helping and which ones are not, and we roll over to what is helping the funds. Because and let's talk about the you want to talk about the US debt and deficit?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about the US deficit exactly?
I think it's huge. I don't know if the calculator that is online is very accurate, but it blows my mind that it just goes up every single day. And to me, I don't think I've ever gotten explained about like what is causing it to rise. I feel like I've heard military in the past, but I don't know if that's 100% accurate.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like arguing. So, like, you can think of our government spending as like a shopping cart, and inside your shopping cart you have like a couple bags of fruits and vegetables, and you have a nice frozen pizza on one side, and then you have two big things of packaged water, of like water bottles. That's effectively, like, if you think about like in if you imagine the US government spending as that, yeah, the water bottles is the US federal spending upon defense and the military. Is that, in terms, it's a very large portion of it. And so there's a lot of arguments that, we need to cut it down. However, if we cut military spending to zero, it wouldn't cure our deficit.
Yeah,
And that's just the
because
truth.
there's so much other things.
Yeah, we spend a lot of money in terms of that. And so there's several arguments, as opposed to in terms of economics right now, of which one is, how do we solve our debt issue? MMT, modern monetary theory, not an issue, solved already. Austrians believe that we should cut our spending a lot of the times, and Chicago has another approach where they say stop spending more. And this is the one that I also agree with as well, in terms of how do we fix our deficit? Is we ignore it. Is a basic approach I would go with. So and it sounds kind of weird. It's like, yes, how do we fix our debt and deficit issue? Well, we just stop spending more, is the actual argument. And so the basic thing is that, imagine if every week you come in and you're spending $150 and you come in and you make $100. Well, if you can keep accruing debt that's not really causing an issue, but you say, okay, I'm not going to spend more than $150, and then every week you earn a little bit more money, and you earn a little bit more money, and you earn a little bit more money, but you're only spending $150, then eventually your income is going to rise to a point where it is at or greater than the money that you were spending beforehand, and you never have to reduce your quality of life.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that's the argument is that so it's all we always talk about in our country. Oh yes, we need to cut or trim. We need to cut this or cut that or reduce spending here, or raise taxes there. If we just stopped, we could fix our deficit in a few years. If we just allowed the economy to basically bring the government's income with its spending.
How do we make payments?
Okay, so the Treasury Department is responsible for that, and so basically we send out government bonds, and then people buy our government bonds, and then we give them money when the bonds come up. We give them the interest on that.
Huh.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the Federal Reserve basically the Federal Reserve every year, or the Treasury Department, I forget exactly who does it, just basically here's more bonds, buy more government, buy more of our government debt, and then we go buy government debt, and then that's it. So a government bond is government debt.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And is it true that the majority of our debt is going to China? Is
No,
that a true
no,
statement?
that's not true. The majority of our debt is not going to China. The majority of our debt is owned by Americans.
Huh.
So yeah,
Yeah.
now
Because
there is debt going to China. I don't want to like. No, there is trillions of dollars that China owns. China owns a few $1 trillion of our debt. Uh, but I do want to mention that China would never, ever, 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 and I do mean ever, do anything to jeopardize our economic status.
like we kind of need each other, right?
Yeah, we
To
don't need China. China needs us.
I was gonna say, could you kind of explain that the theory that we don't need China, but China needs us?
Right. So China's economy is very weird in the way it's developed. And so China has these basic economic zones where they allow all of this like capitalism to flourish, and then other parts of the country are completely centrally planned. And so like Shenzhen is a really good example. Well, China has a real yeah, and so like Shenzhen, like we can talk about this. And so China has these huge issues of industrialization, but they're actually right now their economy is struggling. And so one thing I want to mention is that do you know that the reason that the Chinese keep devaluing the yuan is to make the US dollar more valuable? Like so the Chinese take our money that we give them, they take our dollars and then they hide them in their banks. And the way they do that is by taking on extensive amounts of debt. And so the Chinese have a huge amount of debt to GDP ratio, a huge amount of debt to GDP ratio, and private and public holdings of just this basic debt balloon that is only getting worse for China. And it's all because they're trying to hide our dollars so that our dollars don't devalue in comparison to the yuan. Because if it did, then it wouldn't be as profitable to ship goods between the countries.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's
Huh.
the thing
I
is
never
that
knew that.
yeah, the Chinese have worked really, really, really hard to make their currency worth less than the dollar, because if you have a currency which is weaker than another country, you can give them goods, and it's harder for them to give them goods. It's a weird process that is really hard to explain, and I don't want to do that. And so, in case you're curious, just go out and please somebody YouTube this for themselves, or read about this, because it's really hard to explain, and I don't want to give anybody a wrong impression. But that is the effective way. Is China is manipulating their currency to make it so that the U.S. cannot sell them goods, and as well, China is also having issues with competition. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, and so China was basically this perfect place to go make really really cheap stuff, but China is becoming more of a middle income country, and they're not ready yet, and the central government doesn't think they are. So they're having a hard time because the people in China are demanding better wages, better material, better conditions, and so it's making other countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Indochina to become more valuable, because they can look down to Indochina and say, well, hey, we can build factories and stuff down there for cheaper. And so that's one big issue that China's having, is that they don't feel that they're developed enough, but Indochina is really well suited for this economic development that we saw happen in China, called the Chinese miracle.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look this up more. This is a very interesting topic that I've never really heard about, and I think that you did a good job with breaking like breaking the ground with what
Hmm.
it really is, and
Yeah,
just like
this is
ground
not
overview.
a this is not a like a bachelor's degree in economics here. I'm not, you can't get the the University of KT sign. This is just sort of an overview of what's happening in the clearest and the basic and the simplest of sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I think honestly that's what people need now, because like it gives them a better understanding of like what's happening in the world today and like what is going on in Washington and what's being discussed. So it brings a very good, easy to digest version of it. And I think it will really help people, because I know that it really did help me understand more.
Hmm.
But we are nearing to the time limit. KT, you were a amazing guest. Where can my listeners find you at?
Okay, so if you want to, I'm on Twitter. I am at Proto Socialist, and I am working to actually get my own podcast started to go over more of basically economics. So if you're interested to hear my voice and hear me talk about this stuff, you can you'll find that. And so if you want to follow me on Twitter, I will definitely post updates as to where we are. I plan on having that up by the end of the month, and so that would be great there if you're looking for that.
And everything that KT just listed, we will be linking it in the description of this podcast for easy access. KT, it was amazing having you on, man. It was very beneficial for me, and I'm sure that it's going to be very beneficial for my listeners. I think you did a very good job explaining economics in a very simplistic way, and I like that. And I can't wait to listen to your podcast. I think it's going to be amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man.
All right, thank you, and I'm glad you had me.
Thank you. All right, and that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this show of The More You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It'll certainly help me out in the algorithm, and be sure to subscribe or follow to The More You Know on your favorite podcasting platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And lastly, if you would like to contribute to The More You Know, you can head over to anchor.fm forward slash The More You Know Pod and contribute any monetary value to help the quality of the show, and in the future bring on some more interesting guests. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all of my listeners, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week.